MyInova Summit 2019, realização Federação Assespro e Assespro Paraná, patrocínio Master Sebrae, patrocínio Platinum CGI, patrocinadores Gold, OBR Global, Instituto Cidades Inteligentes, Tramontina e Vieira, Copel Telecom e Governo do Estado do Paraná. Patrocinadores Silver, Reut Consultoria e Contabilidade, Fomento Paraná e BRDE. Patrocinadores Bronze, Local Web Corp, Cluster to Go e Dental Uni Planos Odontológicos. Apoio. Bom, e dando continuidade ainda neste assunto, agora eu convido para subir ao palco Elizabeth Benning, CEO da Growthwheel, com a palestra Um Caminho Certo de Sucesso para Gerir um Negócio Liderado por Mulheres. Elizabeth foi presidente da Associação de Empreendedorismo e Crescimento de Pequenas Empresas de Illinois entre os anos de 2009 e 2011 e fez parte de vários outros conselhos. Em setembro de 2016, foi nomeada uma das líderes mais influentes do condado de McLean. Em 2007, ela foi indicada para 2 prêmios. Eu convido, então, para subir ao palco com vocês, Elizabeth Benning. Uma salva de palmas, por gentileza.
Bom dia. Bem-vindo. Eu me chamo Elizabeth Benning, and that will be about as much Portuguese as you get from me today. I was asked to come talk today about how to ensure success in a woman-led business. And I would like to start off by thanking Robert for inviting me to this incredible event, organizing this speaking event. This is an honor to be here. Thank you so much. Now, as I look at ensuring success in a woman-led business, if only I could. If I could only do that for a man's own business. But I will talk about, as Robert mentioned yesterday, I do have a lot of experience working with businesses. I worked with businesses in the United States for about 20 years, advising everything from very large, well, for small businesses, it can be 500 employees. So mid-sized companies, I guess you would say, working with those individuals and helping to guide them, working in incubators, working in accelerators, working with businesses who are exporting or trying to procure government contracts. So I worked with thousands of businesses, and then 2 years ago, I joined Growthwheel. And now I travel the world and I train business coaches, advisors, and consultants about how they can be the best business advisor they can be. And we've seen, as Maria was sharing some data, women have not always had the opportunities they have now. It's not where we want it to be, but things are changing and getting better. So I thought through about what really are some of the keys for my very successful business clients that were female-owned, and what did they do? And I have some ideas to share with you about what made the difference and distinguished those successful women entrepreneurs. And one thing is, as I think through them, is they really had what we would describe as a 360-degree view on their business. And they focused on sprints. What were the decisions and actions that they needed to take? Success in business really requires having that big picture of where you want to go and grow. So you need to have a full knowledge of the business. Now, I'm going to show you some images. These colors here, the 4 colors, they represent 4 challenges that every business has to face. So those of you who own small businesses, startups, hands up. There were lots of them yesterday. So regardless of your business, from high tech to fashion to food, you have these challenges. And it doesn't matter if you have a 1-person business or 101 people working in your business. Every single business has to have a good business concept. So what is the product or service or technology that people want to buy from you? How is it different from the competition? And at what price can you sell it? So for those early stage companies, you might be working on your very first product. For those of you who are in existing businesses, it's refining and developing that product portfolio a little bit more. But you also have to have a strong team behind you. So who is the team of owners, managers that you have that can help develop and deliver the business concept? So for your newly formed business, it might be getting that very first employee. For an existing business that's really growing, you might be hiring 10 people a month. But it also could be about getting your distribution channels together and your vendors and partners that you're working with. Even if you have that, the money comes only from one place, and that's from the customers. So you have to get new customers, keep them, grow them. For any type of business, this involves some of the types of activities in terms of marketing, branding, PR, managing your image. And then finally, even if you have lots of customers and lots of sales, you have to have profitable operations. So this is where you're making money, you're actually managing the costs, you're making sure that your accounts receivable, your inventory management, all of that is working. You've got enough working capital. And so when I would coach my clients, we would take these big 4 challenges and break them into 20 focus areas. And giving the 20 focus areas was sort of like a checklist. So working with my clients, it shows them maybe where they're not paying attention. Some of my clients had a 240-degree perspective on their business, but not a 360. So we all tend to play to our strengths. Women's strengths tend to be a bit more relational. So maybe that's what you focus on, and you kind of slide by on some of the things that you're not as comfortable with. But by having that 360-degree perspective, we can avoid bias from overusing our own strengths. So you need to run your entire business. And I realized that my clients would do that. They would go to those areas that they weren't as comfortable in, they didn't feel as good about. Now, when you're working with businesses, you only have so much time. So you have to be thoughtful about what are the decisions that are available to you given your current reality. Also, what are the actions you can take? So my clients, my successful female entrepreneurs, were really able to focus on that next sprint. And what were the decisions and actions they need to take in the next 30, 60, or 90 days? And of course, the challenge is there's lots of them. There are so many. So it's all about prioritizing. So what do we need to do this week, and what can I put off? And that leads me to the next idea. My successful female entrepreneurs really applied the lean startup paradigm to their business, and they made strategic choices. Now, we talked a lot about agile business yesterday during the sessions, and you can see here these different aspects of what a traditional business planning model was versus this lean startup agile technology. We are moving from planning the business to experimentation. Where can you experiment in your business? What are things you can try? We're moving from market research and projections to just getting actual feedback from the customer, doing focus groups, talking to 10 of the customers. We're moving from having that perfect design to having an iterative design. So Reid Hoffman, who is the co-founder of LinkedIn, is quoted as saying that if you're not embarrassed by your first release of your product or technology, you release too late. You need to put something out. What is that minimum viable product you can put out into the marketplace and then refine and make better later? We're moving from strategy to much more about the operations, from planning to actually executing, and from long-term planning. As we talked about yesterday, the future is unpredictable, so where are we going with the short-term planning? Now, as I look at this list, some of my clients, my female entrepreneurs I worked with, had a problem with one word especially, and that would be strategy. Sometimes they said, I don't really understand what that means. It's kind of this MBA concept. I read about it, but I don't understand how it's relevant to my business. Now, I like what Michael Porter says from the Harvard Business School. He says that the essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. But that still is not very concrete or helpful to clients sometimes and female entrepreneurs. So I might say, what strategic choices are you facing right now? Thinking of it that way. What are the strategic choices? A strategic choice does not have to be long-term. It can be something short-term. Do you want to try a high price right now or a low price? Do you want to start exporting or not? You can also make a strategic choice without having a specific goal tied to it. You may decide to start exporting because there's an opportunity comes in That doesn't necessarily mean you have goals that are associated with a revenue amount. It also does not have to be fixed. You can make another choice tomorrow. This does not have to be set in stone. It doesn't have to cover everything. It does not have to be comprehensive. It can be simple and small to be a strategic choice. I used this quote yesterday from Mike Tyson, the boxer. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And the point of this is that maybe you don't need to have long-term strategies. It may not be worthwhile, when really short-term tactics are the things that you really need. There are going to be strategic choices throughout the life cycle of your business. You're going to have to focus on those different challenges all throughout your life cycle. And they're going to change as the company grows. So there's some here that are in that startup phase, early phase. There were hands up? Yes? Okay. Excellent. So what are some strategic choices that you might look at specifically for that? Well, some of the strategic choices you might look at, if you're in the early stage, would be ownership. Who is going to be in the business with you? Are you going to have business partners? Are you going it alone? Do you need investors? That's an important strategic choice that you make early on in the business. What about funding? How much money, if any, is going to be on the table as you get started? Are you going to need a line of credit? Are you going to bootstrap the business? Those are strategic choices as well. And finally, branding. So what is the company name and our identity? And it's much more about just the company name. It's the visual identity. It's the tone of voice. It's the physical. It's the packaging and the presence. And also it's how you live the brand of the business. So those could be examples of strategic choices that you might make, but there's some that you may not need to make at this point in time as well. The future product roadmap. You don't need to worry about the entire product roadmap. Start by selling what you have now. Focus on getting that next sprint done, something done and out into the market. You don't need to worry about future market segments. Win one niche. Focus on your backyard. What is an industry that you're very familiar with? And then from there, you can grow into other industries. And you don't need to worry about the competition. Especially for startups, they're not worried about you. So you can just do your thing, and as you grow, the competition will probably be very different by the time you get to them anyway. So the first choice can be decide whether you actually need to make the choice at all, or if you can make it later. In other words, don't cross the bridge until you come to it. Now, the third thing that my successful female entrepreneurs were able to do was actually to manage change. And we talked about that some during sessions yesterday as well. So we're going to talk about change management a little bit. And really, it's about getting the team to do it, right? That's what change management is in real life. So entrepreneurs are wasting their time making great plans if they can't get everyone to play along and change their ways. So why do we care about change management? Well, if you have a great mission or purpose statement and no one lives it, why have it? How does it help you? If you have a great marketing plan, but no one executes it or follows it, how does that help you get more customers? If you have very efficient business processes you're trying to engage your employees with, but no one follows them, you get no benefit. And if you have an IT system which is not being fully utilized, you're not going to get the benefits of those systems as well. So we want to apply change management and make sure we get the whole team along with us. It's going to increase the probability of your project success. It is going to improve adoption and use rates of employees in your business. It's going to manage employee resistance, which is a big challenge, and we'll talk about that. And it's going to help avoid bad habits about change. Sometimes employees can think, oh, this is the flavor of the month. Just wait, it'll blow over. I don't actually have to change. So we want to make sure that everyone is on board with us in our business. The number one obstacle to change is employee resistance. We know this, and actually the research confirms it as well. So, but change happens at every level. So is the change personal on an individual level? Is it on a process or project basis? Or is it systemic in an enterprise level? So you can look at the change on a continuum from individual to the project process all the way to enterprise. We're going to talk briefly about all three of those. On the individual level is how you get rid of those bad habits that we all have. So maybe you procrastinate and you have a hard time getting things done. Maybe you micromanage employees in your business and you're always up to your eyes in work. Maybe you have anger management issues and you lose your temper and you're losing key employees. So we can look at something like ADKAR, which is usually used when you talk about individual changes. And I won't, for the interest of time, I won't go into this too terribly deep, but of course you have to be aware that the change is necessary. Desire is really motivation. Do you want to make the change? Knowledge and ability of how to make the change. And then finally, how do we reinforce the situation so we actually can make those individual changes and make them stick? Você me entende? Okay. Want to make sure you're still with me. Okay, so to go to the other side of the coin, and the other side, at the enterprise level, we're usually talking about culture. So maybe your organization has an in-group or an out-group, or just a group of mean girls. Maybe there's a climate or culture of kind of dog eat dog, everybody's fighting over the sales and you're poaching leads from each other. Maybe you have a culture where people don't take lunch hours or they're afraid to leave at 5 because it shows that they're not dedicated. So as Jack Welch, former CEO of GE, says, the soft stuff, that's the hard stuff. So when you're looking at how to change the culture, some of the ideas you can have is how do you connect it to the values of the business, to the mission and vision. What do you want to see in the company? Align the culture with the brand. Do you live the brand? Is it connecting again with that visual identity or the tone of voice of the company? You have to keep the team accountable. Slip-ups will happen as you're making changes at the big culture level. So maybe there's some ambassadors or some really great models of people who can model the behavior you're looking for, and you can direct people to that as a model or something to look up to. And finally, for the enterprise level, you really have to be patient because change on a big scale like that can take a while. So, for most of us, we're looking at it at a project level. You're trying to implement a new system. And we can look at project level in terms of where are we and how we run our business. Maybe it's the way that you have your inventory control done and it's very inefficient and it's costing the business money. Maybe you're not collecting accounts receivable. Maybe you have an ad hoc system for HR and you're constantly trying to recruit and retain talent. So you have to think through the change process, what needs to be done, and what's that goal end state, the better future. So as you think about organizational change, most people think about it from the organization. Well, we're going to change the HR department. So how do you change the organization? Well, you don't. It's not like you can twist and turn the organization and the HR department will be different. The people are going to have to change. That's how it gets down to that individual level. So in reality, each impacted employee has their own current and future state, how they currently do their job and how they're going to do their job differently once they've got that better future. So change within an organization is really the result of many employees changing. Once everybody changes, that's when you're going to see the benefits of an inventory system that works, of an HR system that actually is able to connect with the people, and to have better inventory management systems. Now, as you're thinking through this, what would impact this? Well, depending on how your adoption and usage rates are, I call this the Swiss cheese slide. When you've got holes in how you're actually implementing things, then that better future is not going to be whole or complete as well. So you won't have as full or robust a complete process if you kind of do it halfway. We can talk about change management in terms of how is it different from project management. They're really just two sides of the exact same coin. So how many of you work in project management? Show of hands. Okay. So when you're doing project management, you're talking about how you design, develop, and deliver the thing that needs to be changed, right? That's the what is changing. But the change management side is the people side. How do you get them to embrace, adopt, and use the thing that you want them to change? And how much change, how much project management you need? Well, it depends. For project management, it depends on the complexity of the project you're doing and how much it changes the systems, the structures, and the job roles. So are you selling to China for the very first time? That's a pretty big project, and making sure that all the pieces are in place. Or are you just going to a conference like me and talking to people? That's not such a big project. Change management, on the other side, again, is talking about the person side of this. So how much change management is needed? Well, again, it depends. How much are you disrupting your employees' jobs? Are you asking them to do their jobs completely differently? You will need to engage in much more change management with them. So I was in a business incubator, and they had changed the light switches in the bathroom. They came on, they were motion detectors. Does that make anyone do their job differently? No. So no one had to change the way they did their job. But if you said, I want you to completely change how we're going to do this Scrum version so we can get this in our Agile technology, and you're going to do your job differently, now we have some change management, because people may say, wait, I've always done it this way. I don't want to change how I do my job. That's when you've got to think about the change management process. It can also depend on the culture. If you have that ever-changing CEO that says, okay, this month we're going to do this, and then the next month, now we're going to do this, and then the next month we're going to do this, and they consistently change and pivot, that's where people get tired of it. There's some fatigue, and they say, oh, it's the flavor of the month, it'll blow over, don't worry about it. Or you could have the opposite situation, where culturally you have someone that says, we've done it this way since 1954, and we're never going to change. That also can make people say, are we really changing? Or is this really not going to happen? Regardless of the level that you're thinking through, you have to have what we call the burning platform. So making the case that they cannot continue doing their job the way they have. So in change management terminology, it's about taking away the structure, the processes, so that they can no longer use them at all. Now, as I was preparing to do this talk here, I talked to a lot of my female entrepreneurs that I used to work with. In fact, I got a call, an email this morning from one of them in New York today. And we were talking about, in the US, we try not to talk about women-owned businesses. We try to take gender out of it. But there still is, as Maria was sharing some data, some disparities. So one thing that is a little bit more personal and less business-oriented is to avoid the victim mentality and taking control. So as an American woman coming here, I wanted to kind of understand what business was like, doing business as an entrepreneur here in Brazil. So I got data from Sebrae. So everybody, you guys know what Sebrae is? We're here. I thought so. Okay. So for those of my compatriots from the US, that would be sort of like the US Small Business Administration. And so full disclosure, I did not collect this data. I got it from Sebrae. I am not the primary researcher on this data. But what Sebrae shared with them, shared on their website, was that there are 9.3 million women-owned businesses in Brazil, and it represents 34% of businesses here in this country. Female entrepreneurs tend to be a little bit younger, just a few years on average, have 16% better education level, but make 22% less than the male entrepreneurs. So it's consistent with Maria's, I'm looking at Maria's shaking her head at me, consistent with her data she was sharing. Female entrepreneurs also find that it's harder for them to get capital. Their average loan is 13,000 reals, reais, less than men. And they pay 3.5% more in interest on average. So I wondered, are women not a good bet? Do they default on their loans more often? Are they delinquent more often? I wondered about that. Why are they having to pay 3.5% more? But actually the data that Sebrae provided showed that actually the delinquency rate for female entrepreneurs is 3.7%, while it's 4.2% for men. So, that's not the best news. But I think that accepting reality so that you can fight it and make changes is much better than holding on to false hope and hoping that things will be better and okay for you. This is also how you can avoid the victim mentality, not putting your head in the sand like an ostrich, but saying, okay, this is the reality I've got. Now how do I play my cards? I think sometimes with women, we aim low and think small when it comes to women entrepreneurs. Women entrepreneurs, by far, use microfinance much more than men do. Microfinance is great. It's an incredibly powerful tool that provides self-sufficiency and self-respect to women. But I think we have to move beyond micro ambitions and micro hopes for women because they have bigger hopes for themselves as well. As Maria was sharing the list of names of women who are CEOs of firms here. And I think part of that, again, is making sure that we stand up for ourselves and making sure we take a seat at the table. Some years ago, I was on a trip to my nation's capital, to Washington, D.C., with a group of other community leaders. This was about 15 years ago. And we visited with senators and representatives from the Congress, from the House of Representatives, and met with people from transportation and commerce. And we were a fairly big group, and there would be a boardroom and some tables, the chairs around the table, but there were never enough chairs around the table. And I noticed how the men immediately went and sat at the table, and the women would sit around on the back wall. They wouldn't take up a spot. And I was grateful that I had a friend and mentor at the time who was on the trip with me and said, no, because there were women who were older than me that were sitting back. And he said, no, you have a seat at the table. This is a metaphor, of course. The metaphor is that if you don't take a seat at the table and stand up for yourself, no one's going to do it for you. No one is going to give it to you. You have to fight and stand up for yourself. And that's a way that we can victimize ourselves, is by sitting back and not taking our seat at the table. There's other ways that we can victimize ourselves. Stop apologizing. Stop over-explaining. We're terrible at that. Women do that all the time. They apologize too much. They over-explain their decisions. Stand by it. I've had clients tell me, female entrepreneurs say that, when I stopped apologizing, that was so empowering to me. I didn't have to apologize for my opinion. Stop taking things personally. There's a book called The 4 Agreements. Anybody read The 4 Agreements? And it talks about don't take anything personally. Now the hard part about that is don't take the good stuff personally even. But don't take things personally. There may be men that don't want to work with or under the supervision of a woman. That's not fair. But taking it personally and whining about it or complaining about it keeps you stuck in that victim mode. It doesn't help you to actually move beyond that. We also have to stop allowing ourselves to be bullied or intimidated. It can take great courage to stand up to someone who's against you. But do your best to use professionalism, politeness, and humor, if you can, to stand up for yourself and make your needs known. Now, I can't talk about women in entrepreneurship and not mention some research that I found that I think you'll find very interesting. This is Dr. Dana Kans. She's an assistant professor of organizational behavior at the London Business School. She's a former female entrepreneur, and she studies implicit gender bias in startups. Her research has been printed in the Harvard Business Review and the Academy of Management Journal. And she studied startup founders who were pitching at this big investor pitch competition in New York City. And she found that the investors were asking the startup people, the founders, very different questions. Women would be asked about what could go wrong in the venture. So how they might lose customers, how the investors might lose money. The men, on the other hand, were asked questions about how the business is going to grow, how they're going to maximize investor profits. So men were asked questions about how they're going to promote the business and make it great and big, And women were asked questions about how they were going to not lose money and how they were going to maintain what they had and hold on to what they had. Regardless of the topic at hand, these questions were framed as either promotion or prevention. Her research showed that 67% of the questions to male entrepreneurs were promotion-focused, and 66% of the questions to the female entrepreneurs were prevention-focused. She also found that the gender of the investor didn't matter. Female investors asked the female entrepreneurs prevention questions too. And yes, it had a huge impact in how much money the female versus male entrepreneurs were able to raise in this competition. But, and this is interesting, the entrepreneurs who were able to turn the prevention questions around and focus on promotion issues raised 14 times the amount of funding as those who couldn't do that. So my advice to women entrepreneurs would be, based on this research first, to recognize the type of question you're being asked. Is it a prevention question? Is it about playing small, keeping what you have? Or is it a promotion question about expanding? Then manage it. So if you were asked a question about how you're going to defend your startup's market share, you would be better off to frame your response about the growth potential of the overall market and how it's going to be growing, rather than how you merely plan to defend your small slice of the pie. So if I was asked a question about that, I might say, yes, this is a very attractive market, and we do expect other players to come in, but we are going to maintain and grow our share in this market because our company has these attributes that are very unique, or we have this team and that skill set is very unique. So you can turn it around and manage it. So we need to review the decisions and actions that are actually available to you. I provided some statistics, as did Maria, that the deck can be a bit stacked against women. Given that, we need to be realistic about what things we can do and changes we can make. And thankfully, there are already tools out there for you to use. Women can get cash flow loans based on income rather than based merely on assets. They can get loans that use secure contracts rather than collateral, because oftentimes women don't own property. They can pool resources with other partners so that instead of going it alone, you have others that can help you along the process. So some final thoughts as we close up. You know, here in Brazil and across the world, women really have the opportunity to grow their businesses, both male and women-owned businesses, because of course the advice I've shared today works equally well for male-owned businesses too. So in general, whether you have that full 360-degree view of your business and all the challenges that you need, and not just working on the fun parts, applying the lean startup paradigm, using those agile technology developments, what are the strategic choices you need to make, what can you put off, managing the change, and avoiding being a victim. Don't think of yourself necessarily as a woman-owned business. Don't focus on your gender. We all have the opportunity to be successful regardless of our gender. This is a picture of myself, my husband, and our daughter. She works in New York City and Manhattan in a male-dominated industry, advertising of pharmaceutical drugs. And I really look forward to a time in her life, I hope, where whether she's successful or not has nothing to do with her gender. Her gender should be no more relevant to her success than her shoe size or her eye color. It doesn't matter. We all have this ability. You know, women are half the population. Actually, we're more than half the population. So let's stop being a special interest group at the same time. It's time to not be a special interest group and half the population. So I thank you so much for your time. Muito prazer. I hope we can continue the conversation.
Muito obrigada, Elizabeth, pela sua presença. E agora eu gostaria de convidar a todos vocês para que juntos possamos assistir um vídeo institucional do nosso patrocinador Gold, OBR Global.
You're going to visit some of the best universities, some of the top companies, meeting with top thought leaders, meeting with potential partners and customers. It's really a wonderful experience and sets you up to change your mindset around what's needed to make your company a player in the global marketplace.
Uma experiência incrível, nós conseguimos entender um pouco do mindset do Vale, como essa inovação toda pode ser adaptada à nossa realidade.
Se vocês estão separando dinheiro para investir em educação na sua empresa, em MBA para você mesmo, ou no mestrado para você, pega esse dinheiro e vem para cá. Vem para cá, faz uma missão, conhece o mercado, entende como é que as coisas aqui funcionam. Eu posso dizer que nos últimos 5 dias eu aprendi talvez mais do que eu aprendi em 5 anos de universidade, e eu não estou exagerando.
Uma semana bastante intensa, fizemos diversas visitas e aprendemos muito com a OBR.
Uma das experiências mais produtivas que eu já tive, mais esclarecedoras, porque mudou completamente a minha forma de pensar.
E agora nós faremos um rápido intervalo para o café. Eu espero vocês aqui novamente em 15 minutos. Obrigada.